I mean, we are in an industry that basically everyone blames us, aren't we, Russell? You know, if anything goes wrong, we're blamed.
We need to talk about this issue more because there's an enormous amount of stress. This is an incredibly pressured environment. People are receiving a lot of pressure from inside the industry and, as the research shows, from outside the industry, from clients.
Do we think some people play the mental health card too readily? And how should employers see through that?
Actually, life has become significantly more stressful. And one of the biggest drivers has been social media. We're conducting the greatest social experiment we've ever done in a civilization with social media. Portraying all these unrealistic people driving very fast cars with very nice watches but still living at their parents. And it's complete, you know, the digital nomads who are basically on a gap year. You're not a digital nomad, you're on a gap year.
42% of estate agents in 2023 experienced mental health issues. To me, that sounds an awful lot. Simon, you are the author of The Voice of the Agent, a survey of over 800 estate agents. 42%, and in fact, that's split equally between men and women. Sounds an awful lot of people.
Yeah. Others on the panel can talk about this as well, because it actually affects us personally with people around us and maybe even ourselves. But when I actually was doing this part of the report, I was saying to David Mintz from Kerfuffle the other day, I actually had to walk away at the point because the results of this point and a section that follows about discrimination really shocked me, and actually how endemic and how equal it is between men and women in terms of mental health. There's some interesting results in there of how men and women deal differently with what happens to them, which is kind of interesting to look at. But also, it was interesting that nearly 12% of people said it actually got worse in the last 12 months. And I think as an industry, and others please will chip in on this point, is we need to talk about this issue more because there's an enormous amount of stress. This is an incredibly pressured environment. People are receiving a lot of pressure from inside the industry and, as the research shows, from outside the industry, from clients. And I think we need to be much more loud about what is there to help them, so they can address these issues. People are not on their own, and there's resources to help.
I mean, we are in an industry that basically everyone blames us, aren't we, Russell? You know, if anything goes wrong, we're blamed.
Yeah.
We get shouted at.
Yeah, I wonder what the split would be actually if we started asking different roles within the property industry. I suspect sales progressors, their mental health issues would be through the roof, because it's probably one of the most stressful jobs that you could probably have, not just in the property industry, but generally. So yeah, look, it's actually not that much of a surprise to me. I think it's actually both a very stressful industry to work in, and dare I venture, also, I think, underpaid, which probably doesn't help. Now, I'm not saying that more money is compensation for mental health, but maybe it helps a bit.
I mean, it scares me that only 11% of people have taken professional help, and the vast majority of people have tried to address the situation privately or dealt with family or friends. I mean, what are the solutions to this?
For example, I have been working alongside the fantastic charity Agents Together over the last couple of years because my background originally is in business coaching and, in fact, creating mentoring capacity within corporate life. And so I volunteered to work with Agents Together to help their mentors be able to mentor the people, the agents that they were dealing with more effectively. And charities like that, and there are several around, Chris, which I know you'll talk about, do a fantastic job if agents reach out and say, you know, I really would love to have a mentor. And that's not just about the mental health mentoring, but in fact, mentoring perhaps the business issues, for example, that are causing or are a significant part of the stress that are causing the mental health problems.
Obviously, it can't be a group solution, but you're basically saying if you've got someone on your side as a mentor, it will alleviate an awful lot of the mental health issues.
Yeah, just having somebody to download to, somebody to
someone
listen.
on your side.
Yeah. You know, in the world that we operate in now, the person is the professional is the personal. You know, we don't have a great work-life balance in our lives, and for a lot of us, certainly among self-employed people, for example, work is life, and that's kind of, it becomes the whole thing. But I think what we've got to realise is if you're a leader of people, your team are not just work units. Their job is not robots. They have personal lives. They may have things going on at work. And if you're going to be a genuine leader of people, you need to understand the whole person and signpost them. You may not be part of a massive organisation with HR departments can do all this stuff, but simply by having some education and learning on the subject, being open about, for example, my gender that's very bad about talking this with men, but also signpost where there's help. Make it very clear that people like Agents Together list all the various bodies for financial problems, for personal problems, for suicide, all the horrible things that happen in people's lives. But also the Property Mark Trust, which is there, provides incredible help to people. It's actually really, for people who have gone through incredibly bad things in their lives, it's done amazing things. I'll declare an interest. I'm an ambassador of the Property Mark Trust. But what I've learned about it in the last few weeks of getting to know it is how much they can really step in there. And as you say, be by someone's side when they're going through a difficult time.
One thing I'm particularly impressed with is the Women in Estate Agency Facebook group. Obviously, yes. I'm not in it myself, but I've been told that those that are in it is a very safe space. Are you in it yourself?
No, not in it. I have a lot of involvement with them.
I keep getting knocked back too.
but there's, I think all we as human beings just want someone to listen to us and just appreciate, and going through and just an ear to hear. Simon, what have you got to add on the subject?
Well, I was just going to say, I think many of us were at the Women in the Estate Agency conference, and Verona said at the start of it that it was her greatest wish that they didn't need to have to keep doing this. And I think the very stereotype about what we're talking about, just because it's a stereotype doesn't mean it's not true. And that point in there that shows none of the above, what have you done to address it? None of the above is obviously markedly higher for men. And that's because we don't talk about it. It took Women in the Estate Agency conference to have those sessions of which you're talking about, David Mintz and many other ones there, talking in a very vulnerable, sense about those challenges, those life challenges and how they've dealt with it. I know you've been practicing this on talking about this on the couch for ages, but it is enlightening, I think, that so many of the other conferences come at it from that happy clappy sense in terms of, how fantastic you're doing. And that's why things like that are so important. Sarah Edmondson does it obviously with you guys at Agents Together and everything else there. And that needs to be encouraged at every opportunity.
We need a really strong message. It's okay not to be okay. It's actually, we all see these incredible lives on. So we're conducting the greatest social experiment we've ever done as a civilization with social media, portraying all these unrealistic people driving very fast cars with very nice watches, but still living at their parents. And it's complete, the digital nomads who are basically on a gap year. You're not a digital nomad, you're on a gap year. Stop saying you're a digital nomad. We have this false portrayal of what life is like.
People are judging someone else's real.
It's not real.
When in reality, we're all in a...
They go home, they turn the camera off and they burst into tears.
Well, how many people of those people do you see have committed suicide? Yeah. And the last thing was just about it's just horrendous.
So I think it's okay not to be okay, and there are people there to help.
And I think, Chris, there's a responsibility on business leaders or estate agency owners to educate themselves on this topic. It's 2024. It's a major societal issue. It's not just an estate agency. It's across the whole country and society. And there's options out there. So, for example, I've done a mental health first aid course, 2-day course. I'm by no means a mental health expert, but that educated me a lot more. And I think if you're owning a business, you need to be approachable so that your employees feel like they can go to you with these issues, because I think a lot of employees feel like they can't because the owners don't get it or will almost think see it as being a weakness.
Russell?
Slightly controversially, I'm just going to suggest something on behalf of employers, just to provide some balance. And I'm not removing any of the seriousness around mental health per se. But we know from the data that every year about an extra 400,000 people in this country declare themselves off sick and unable to work through anxiety, depression, mental health. Do we think today's society and today's workplace is loads more stressful than 20 or 30 years ago when that wasn't the case? And what I'm going to venture, this is just a question, right? So don't shoot me down in flames, but again, for balance, you're all looking really concerned. Simon's not. He's loving this because he thinks he's going to say it, isn't he? Do we think some people play the mental health card too readily? And how should employers see through that? Because my question is, if as an employer you simply have this graph going up and up and up and up and up, that of your 500 or 1,000 or 50 employees, more and more and more are purporting to suffer with mental health issues and having time off and being signed off. How do you run a business on that basis? It's something that has to be said. One or two people might actually be agreeing with my hypothesis.
I see it all the time, and it's it is a massive issue. That's why you need professionals who understand mental health. It's not a tick box exercise. You don't at one side have someone in an office who just basically says, "We've got a mental health policy, we're fine." You don't on the other side of it go, everyone who says they have a problem, let them go off work. You need to have a proper consultation with someone who's trained in understanding what the signs of mental health are. But we don't dive down one of two channels. They're all slackers, not doing anything, and they're all taking time off. What has happened, and this has been studied from the 1970s, is the happiest year for human beings in the world globally was 1978. As a species, we've got less happy ever since. What's happened there is technology. Technology, we are basically primates. We're pattern-seeking monkeys who are terrified of this technological world that we've created. We can't keep up with the volume of communication that we have. You know, I was told in the 1970s by Tomorrow's World, I'd be sitting on a beach and robots would do everything for me. I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my entire life. And I think what you've got with a combination of, we won't get into the politics of it, but a cost of living crisis is putting people under enormous pressure. We've had no real pay rises for the middle class since 2008. People are poorer than they've ever been since about the 1920s, I think it is. So people are massively under pressure financially. Work, you're never off.
But our standard of living as a country is higher now than it's ever been.
But it's all relative. It's like saying, well, you know, I can't feel bad because there's people in Africa who are starving. Therefore, I can't feel bad because I'm not doing as badly as them. Your experience is relative to the thing around you.
And your social media feed, which shows everyone doing fantastically well. Everyone's got the watch and the car and the job and the beautiful life and the holiday and so on, which, of course, generally is not actually true, but we subscribe to it. So that puts us under even further pressure.
And there's lots of very well peer-reviewed analysis that shows actually life has become significantly more stressful. And one of the biggest drivers has been social media. Young women are under appalling pressure now. I am so glad I grew up before the internet.
But let me just extend the scenario very quickly. What happens when 80% of people are off with anxiety and depression?
We address the fact that's a problem and do something about it. We do what the lady suggested. We take mobile phones off kids. We don't give smartphones to kids. Why are we giving... No, the owners of social media companies do not let their children go on social media.
There was that documentary.
Why is that? Yeah. Okay. Social dilemma.
It's insane, that, isn't it? And they literally talk about the danger of that dopamine hit and everything else and take it away from it. Yeah.
It's the crack cocaine of our children, and we've just let it happen to them.
Going back to your point about, as an employer, having people off. Now, I employ 15 people, and it is a concern, and I think having policies and so on. But I also would love to unpick that 42% in terms of how many of those people are employed and how many of them are self-employed or business owners.
Yeah. Huge difference.
Because I think the self-employed people and the business owners are just as, if not more likely to suffer the mental health issues, because actually it's a very, very, very lonely place.
It's like the private sector, public sector difference. You're much, much more likely to have time off sick in the public sector. Who knew?
But the people who are running the businesses, so the private sector, are much more likely to suffer, but suffer in silence, because it's not okay if you're running a business to go off sick with mental health or to admit to anybody in your organisation, I have I'm struggling with my mental health. You know, it just isn't. If you're self-employed or you're a business owner, you can't do it. And it's a very lonely place.
I think the magic takeaway here is that you have to be self-aware if you do have issues, and then you need to go out and take responsibility for your own mental health, and take ownership by either approaching agents together with mentors, because that someone's on your side. There's Ben Madam's Boys Club, there's the Property Mart Trust, and again, the ladies have their Women in the State Agency Facebook group, which is a safe space, and I thoroughly recommend the chaps out there that you join organisations. You know, it's been proven beyond doubt that if they join like boys-owned clubs like your Rotaries, I know that's mixed, but Round Table or Freemasons or something like that, you get that banter and that release. So thank you for your time today. Thank you.